Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the City Commission meeting of Tuesday, May 15th, 2018. I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask you to please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First is approval of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move that we approve this evening's agenda as presented.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Is that a no? Okay. Approval of the minutes of both the special meeting of April 23rd, special meeting of April 24th, and the regular City Commission meeting of April 24th, and another special meeting on April 26th. We've been busy. That was the week where we saw each other every day.
I move the approval of all four sets of minutes.
I'll second.
Any comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Communications. Comments?
I have some questions. On the library donation, have we sent thanks to the heirs of Martin Weiland?
I don't know, I'll find out tomorrow. I don't believe we've received the check yet, so, but I'll make sure that a thank you note goes out once we get that.
Okay, on the city entrance signs, 10 plus Coolidge, or 10 at Coolidge, why isn't that on the corner wall where it used to be rather than it looks like on a side wall? There is an angle right at the corner of that fencing, and that's where the signage used to be.
At 10 and Coolidge, the sound wall?
10 and Coolidge,
Right on the
right
corner.
when they come to the corner, when you make that right turn to go north on Coolidge.
I guess I'm not familiar with what wall is there.
There's two
brick
walls
wall.
that come together, and right at the corner there is an angle. And the way this picture shows, it looks like the wall actually is angled like that, but it's tall.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's Woodward.
Woodward and...
I know this is Woodward.
Oh, okay.
I'm not complaining or questioning Woodward. I'm saying there also is an angle at 10 Mile and Coolidge when you make a right turn on the exit. And that's where the sign was, at least for the last 30 years.
It's the same area where I think the young man did some landscaping to kind of spruce it up.
Area that the Eagle Scout put in.
Right.
So we're gonna put it on a wall that is further east on 10 Mile Road. So anybody driving down Coolidge is not gonna see that sign.
If you're heading north, you will.
Well,
Sure, if
I
you're
think
heading north.
that this picture looks like this is the turnaround on the service drive where this sign is. This does not look like it's at the intersection of the service drive and Coolidge.
That's 10 Mile and Scotia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the other one is on a long, flat wall.
Let me see if I understand this. There is the sound wall for 696. That's got
Yes.
the curve, and the
Yes.
Boy Scout did the landscaping. Is there an existing wall in addition to that, or was there one at one time?
There
that's
is
now
a
gone?
wall that exists there now. Nothing has ever happened except the sign came off of it. It is right across the street from Oak Park. It's the logical location.
You know,
for it.
let me go out tomorrow and look for it.
Thank you very much.
And this may be where it actually is going to go, but this picture doesn't, this rendering does not look like that's where
No,
it is.
No. Right at the intersection itself, there is a 45-degree angle.
Yeah.
And it's,
And you're talking about something other than the brick
Not the
sound
brick
wall?
It is, no, it is right on the brick wall. The brick wall, instead of coming together like this, actually has an angle at the corner. A
is that where this is
45-degree
going?
angle.
Above where the Eagle Scout did the landscaping?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, then that's where it's
it
going.
is. Yeah.
But this picture doesn't look like that. I
No,
guess
there's
is-
no landscaping on
Right.
here.
Okay, so it will go at the corner,
Yes,
the intersection, that's fine.
okay.
My third question is a letter came to the city in regard to this proclamation, and it did not show up on the agenda, and we were sent a note saying, does anyone object to it being on the agenda? And I have never, since I've been on the commission, had any other proclamation where someone sent it to me and said, do you object? Obviously, when it's presented to us, we then can object to it. Now, the other thing is if nobody likes it, that's one story. But I did indicate back to you that I did support it because it had a Second Amendment recognition and protection in there. It didn't say wipe out the Second Amendment and take away everybody's gun. And there is no opportunity for discussion on this. And that's why I voted no on this, because this is missing, and it's contrary to any policy or practice we have ever done in the past. We don't selectively send out an inquiry to the commission. We vote in public. And there actually was a note that said, so if, because of the Open Meetings Act, don't comment back to your colleagues. Now, at least, if someone communicates with the city, put it on the agenda. If you don't want to put it on the agenda, it is a real communication. Did you communicate to the city?
I assumed it was on the agenda.
I do know Wendy is here to talk about that proclamation this evening, and I'm more than willing to accept an amendment to the agenda to add that.
I would like
To
to
the
see
agenda.
this added.
Okay.
I mean, we
We have-
have,
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, I would propose we add that as the first item of business before item number 1.
that sounds fine to me.
Okay. All right, any other comments or questions? Okay, hearing none others, the communications are received and filed. And, I think I saw our county commissioner, Commissioner Zach, come in. You have any good news for us from the county?
Money. Send money.
We got some money that came this way for our economic development, and collectively, we actually appropriated over $509,000 at my last
Huntington
meeting.
Woods?
Not to Huntington Woods, but we purchased 668 water fountains in the elementary schools throughout Oakland County. And these are the ones, the filtration systems, so I can tell you that all of our elementary schools have clean, fresh, filtered water. And that was a big undertaking project for us, and a big deal that we appropriated that amount of money. In addition to that, we have offered bulk purchasing. The company that we purchased from is willing to sell other drinking fountains to public entities at the same cost. So that, that was money that came back into our community. Wanted to let you know that this Saturday, May 19th, is the Oakland County auction of things that are confiscated or found as a result of different theft or so forth. And if you're interested in this auction, you can register starting at 7 a.m. It is at the Oakland County Complex, 1200 North Telegraph. It's at the Vehicle Operations Center, which is Building 16. And if you want to see what's for sale, you can go to www.oakgov .com/auction and see the list of vehicles and printers and things that are available. The DNA, once again, lab is running, and this is a big deal. Historically, all we had was the state of Michigan DNA lab, and they were months behind testing. So now we have our own certified, licensed Oakland County DNA lab, and this will expedite so many criminal cases, prosecutions. It's been years in the making, but I'm very excited that we have it. I want to thank Huntington Woods for providing a letter on behalf of the SMART millage. The SMART millage is coming before the voters in August 2018. There was some difficulty getting the millage asked through the committee process. So in 2015, it was approved at a 1 mil, but there was a Headley rollback. And so presently, this tax year, we are only paying .9863 mils. And SMART is asking for the full mill. So the ballot language will say, state that it's both a renewal and an increase. And some of my colleagues did not want to vote for a tax increase, even though they live in opt-out communities of SMART. But we did get it passed with the 1, and it was helpful to have supportive letters. Another thing that we do annually is approve the 911 surcharge that goes on to all telephone bills. And we are still in the transition of going from the old AT&T copper lines into a new SENEC state-of-the-art communication system. And while we continue to transition, there has been an increase because we need to change the technology and also purchase new equipment for the local communities. One of the things that I wanted to know is that Huntington Woods and other communities that I represent, you will not have to spend money on equipment. This will be part of the surcharge as we move forward. I am in the process of, it's been drafted, I'm going to introduce a support RTA millage, and my thrust of this resolution that I am introducing is encouraging the RTA Authority Board to vote in favor of putting the vote before the people and let people chime in whether they want to invest more money in transit or not. I'm very sensitive to more mills, but at the same time, I really feel that this is something that citizens should be allowed to vote on, yay or nay. So, to be continued. There have been a series of community meetings, and they are going to offer a new plan as a result of the critique that they've heard throughout Oakland County and other communities, and that should be on the website in June, beginning of June. And the RTA board is supposed to take a vote at their June 14th meeting, but they still have until July to vote if they want to put the vote before the people, on the ballot. Finally, Oakland County Parks millage has been delayed. It's technically not up until 2020. Our Oakland County Parks and Rec Board voted to put the millage before the people in August of 2018 until they came to the South End Commissioner Caucus. And we said to them, show us how you're spending money in our community. Just like Brooks Patterson said, we don't want to pay for a tax that we're not getting our fair share.
You're proposing opt-out?
I can't do that legally. We investigated that. But they certainly can show us more concretely how they will invest more money in our end of town through more recreation programs and so forth. They do bring us recreation programs, but it's 5,000, 6,000, and it doesn't compare anywhere to the millage that we contribute toward the overall park system. So to be continued, there's some negotiations going on. So that's it for this evening. Any questions? Yes.
I would like to see, and maybe my colleague in the back will disagree with me, but I would like to see if we had a wish list that Oakland County, until they get some more parks, especially on the lower west side, that they contribute to our recreation equipment, so that they give us $60,000 for a piece of equipment in a park, especially if it's a boundary park near another.
So I hear you. I personally, my number one thing, I'd like to have a matching fund, just
That's
like we
fine.
did the economic development just like we did that local road and that we've done with Tri-Party. That's something that
But do it in those areas where there are an
Correct.
underrepresentation of
I
county
agree.
parks.
I totally agree. So it's on the table.
Thank you.
Everybody, when we had recession, and that Parks and Rec is one of the areas, parks, equipment, it's universally, this is where people cut. The maintenance of that, it's not a mandatory, it's a very important thing that we do, but it's not mandatory like public service. So universally, communities haven't been able to invest in their parks infrastructure. So I hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is public participation. This is an opportunity for the public to speak on an item that is not already on the agenda. Do we have any?
Hi, I'm Linda Solomon. So I was hoping to get some kind of update on where the city stands with the zoning with the Detroit Zoo. And just to let you know that at Huntington and Ludlow, the area that we refer to as their staging area, people have complained that it's back to looking messier than it was when they were asking us to approve their plans for the tiger expansion. And also they have put tarps up along the entire dinosaur exhibit, which I know it's temporary, but as far as opacity, that's like non-existent. You can see the tarps, and in the past, they've argued that the tarps are to protect the animals, so the argument to protect the dinosaurs really is not valid. So, I just don't want the city to forget, because we're not all coming to the meetings like we were in the past, but, we are still very interested in trying to get the zoning ordinance to reflect residents' preferences along Huntington. So has anything been done?
Yes, it has, actually. I can update you on, the city planner has just finished an extensive review of the zoning ordinance. We passed it on to the city attorney, who's gone over everything, prepared some documents that we are going to sit down with the zoo and go over. And then once we get some of their input, we're going to invite the public back in, as we promised we would, to get the public's opinion on everything. So we're at the point now where we're gonna go back to the zoo and get some input from them.
Okay.
We'll shortly after that be meeting with the community.
So is that the commission that meets with the zoo, or the planning commission?
At this point, it's just gonna be the city manager and myself.
Okay. Well, if you would like some input from residents, we are, happy to come back and share our opinions.
Definitely will.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. We actually have you on the agenda
Oh, so I
now,
should
so,
wait?
yep,
Okay.
just. We're almost there.
Okay.
All right, any other public participation? Okay, seeing none other, public participation is closed. And we'll move on to the proclamation. We have one proclamation this evening proclaiming the City of Huntington Woods recognizing this month of May 2008 as Mental Health Month. And I won't read the entire proclamation, but I'll touch on a few of the important parts of it. Whereas 1 in 5 Americans experience a mental health illness that requires treatment at some point in their lives, and 1 in 10 children has serious emotional disturbance that, if untreated, can lead to school failure, physical illness, substance abuse, jail, and even suicide. Whereas May 10th has been designated the National Children's Mental Health Awareness Day, and the City of Huntington Woods and the Oakland County Community Mental Health Authority and its service provider agencies are committed to inspiring hope, empowering people, and strengthening communities. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City of Huntington Woods and the Oakland County Mental Health Authority hereby recognizes May 2018 as Mental Health Month and calls upon our citizens, government agencies, public and private institutions, businesses, and schools to recommit our state to increasing awareness and understanding of mental illness and the need for appropriate and accessible service for all people with mental illnesses to promote recovery. Proclaim this 15th day of May 2018 and signed by myself.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Public hearing. This is something we do annually to have to hold a public hearing and in order to receive public input on the proposed 2018-2019 city budget in accordance with Chapter 9, Section 8 of the city charter. The budget has been, do you want to give a brief overview of the?
Sure, the budget was presented to you at the last meeting. Really, no substantial changes over what was proposed in terms of services and personnel over last year. You're putting together the long-range budget committee to take a look at our future going forward, because we know we're at a crossroads here where shortly expenditures are going to outstrip revenue, but we're not at that point. This budget, we're squeaking in. So, I'd like to get any public input on that budget, and then later on in the agenda is the actual adoption of the budget.
Any comments from the public? All right, seeing none, public participation is, or the public hearing is closed, and we'll move on to our regular items of business. Our first item of business it relates to a proclamation declaring the first Friday in June to be the National Gun Violence Awareness Day. And I know Wendy is here to talk a little bit about that. Why don't we start with you? Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you, Commissioner Jenks, for your support. I don't know if you had a chance to read the proclamation, but what we're asking, I'm here representing Moms Demand Action. I'm an almost 40-year resident of Huntington Woods and have always been proud to live in this community. We're asking you to approve this proclamation, as the mayor just explained, declaring Friday, June 1st as National Gun Violence Awareness, or Wear Orange Day, and to declare that as a country we must do more to reduce gun violence. The proclamation has nothing to do with the Second Amendment, as you mentioned, or anything about stricter gun control laws. It specifically honors and remembers the victims and survivors of gun violence. Just by way of some statistics, in this country, every day, 96 people are killed by guns. Every year, 36,000 people are killed by gun violence. In this country, we are 25 times more liable to be killed by guns than any other developed country. And the worst part is that gun violence is now the third leading killer of our children. So this day has been started to bring more awareness of the issue of gun violence, to try and get people to support it, to wear orange on that day, on June 1st, as a measure of support to increase awareness, to commit to reducing gun violence and to encouraging responsible gun ownership. So already I know that Royal Oak, Pleasant Ridge, Ferndale, and I believe Berkeley have signed on to this proclamation, and I'm hoping that you will agree to do that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Why don't I start by reading the proposed proclamation, and then we'll go from there. This proclamation declares the first Friday in June to be National Gun Violence Awareness Day, Wear Orange Day, in the city of Huntington Woods to honor and remember all victims and survivors of gun violence, and to declare that we as a country must do more to reduce gun violence. Whereas every day, 96 Americans are killed by gun violence, and on an average there are nearly 13,000 gun homicides every year. And whereas Americans are 25 times more likely to be killed with guns than people in other developed countries. Whereas protecting public safety in the communities they serve is the mayor's highest responsibility. Whereas support for the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens goes hand in hand with keeping guns away from dangerous people. And whereas mayors and law enforcement officers know their communities best, are the most familiar with the local criminal activity and how to address it, and are best positioned to understand how to keep their citizens safe. And whereas in January of 2013, Hadia Pendleton, a teenager who marched in President Obama's second inaugural parade and was tragically shot and killed just weeks later, should now be celebrating her 21st birthday. And to help in her honor and the 96 Americans whose lives are cut short in this country's whose lives are cut short, and the countless survivors who are injured by shootings every day, a national coalition of organizations has designated June 1st, 2018, the first Friday in June, as the 4th National Gun Violence Awareness Day. Whereas the idea was inspired by a group of her friends who asked her classmates to commemorate her life by wearing orange. They chose this color because hunters wear orange to announce themselves to other hunters when out in the woods, and orange is a color that symbolizes the value of human life. Whereas anyone can join this campaign by pledging to wear orange on June 1st, the first Friday in June, to help raise awareness about gun violence. And whereas by wearing orange on June 1st, 2018, Americans will raise awareness about gun violence and honor the lives of gun violence victims and survivors. Whereas we renew our commitment to reduce gun violence and pledge to do all we can to keep firearms out of the wrong hands, and encourage responsible gun ownership to help keep our children safe. Now therefore be it proclaimed that Mayor Robert Paul of the City of Huntington Woods declares the first Friday in June 1st, 2018, to be National Gun Violence Awareness Day, Wear Orange Day. I encourage all citizens to support their local community's efforts to prevent the tragic effects of gun violence and to honor and value human lives. Signed this 15th day of May, 2018.
I'd like to, well, do you need a motion before we discuss it? I'd like to move the proclamation as presented.
I'll second it.
Any public comment? Any comments or questions?
Just a comment. Was hesitant. I am hesitant to get involved in these sorts of proclamations. I think it opens the door to politicizing our body here, and we are not a political entity. I do think that even though on its face this sounds really good, and I support everything that is said in this particular proclamation, I know the history of Moms Demand Action. I know the history of what its founder and what Mayor Bloomberg is attempting to do, and there is some gun control. It is a political, I'm not sure what the word is that I'm looking for, but it is political in nature. And I think what it does is it opens the door for us to start accepting other proclamations. In fact, I have one here, the National Sanctity of Human Life Day. Are we going to also proclaim that day? So we just open ourselves up for politicization of things that should not really be before us. While we all feel very sympathetic to victims of gun violence, and certainly we all wish to see gun violence reduced, I don't think that it is, as I have heard, germane to the function of this body. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Mr. Mayor, I would just say that we don't have a policy on this, and I guess we just adopted one on mental health, declaring a mental health month, and to me, it needs to either be all or nothing. That either we accept every proclamation that's presented to us, place it on the agenda, and then commissioners can either vote for or against it, or we accept no proclamations and we quit the practice altogether. Personally, I don't mind if these proclamations appear on the agenda. If it's something that I believe, as a representative of the citizens of this community, that they would not support, I'll vote against it. If it's something that I feel, as a representative of the citizens in the community, it's something they would support, I'll vote for it. How I feel about the Second Amendment and related stuff, frankly, is my personal view on it isn't relevant, because when I'm sitting at this desk, I represent the 6,000 folks in this community and what they feel. But I do agree that, the commission should take a position on whether or not we want to entertain these types of things or whether we don't. And again, if we're going to do it or not do it, it's an all or nothing. Whether mental health, child abuse, gun violence, who's going to be the decider of what gets on this agenda and what doesn't? And that's kind of my feeling on the matter. So, I'm comfortable, moving this resolution forward. Obviously, I seconded the motion, but at some point, and maybe it's before the next meeting or at some point in the near future, we decide as a commission how we want to handle these.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I agree with Commissioner Rozell on that, but I don't think you can have a hard and fast rule as the city commission saying we won't accept any proclamation. But I also agree with Commissioner Iverson on the idea that my own personal view is, on a personal view, I think it's 100% right. I consider it a public health issue, not a political issue. When this many people are dying and the cost to medicine in this country of gun violence and the horrible consequence of this reckless situation that we have, I'm 1,000,000,000% in favor of the proclamation and more. See, I don't, and this is, but my view has been that unless it has to do with governing the city, that my position on these things is, it goes to lots of things. It goes to, we used to honor, we have one for National Nurses Day, National Nurses Week, things like that. And these are all fine, and they're all feel good, and they're all, and I don't say that in a light way. I mean, it's a good thing to do. But my view has been, unless it has to do with the operation of the city, governing the city, I don't know why we do it. However, if it gets on the agenda, then I think our responsibility is to vote on it based on, as Joe said, not just how we feel personally, but how we believe the constituency we represent feels about the issue. And like I said, I see this as, I understand where some would argue it's political because of the current debate we're in and the NRA and all this, that, and the other thing. However, I see this as a public health hazard, and like I said, There are issues here far beyond just the political debate, the billions and billions of dollars that are used to take care of people who have been injured, many of whom wind up in Medicaid and Medicare and Social Security disability. I mean, if you start to add up the cost of all this and just put it in dollars and cents terms, I think that would be persuasive to many people one way or another in the argument. But I just want to, I don't want the proponent to think that, you know, when you say, well, we shouldn't be considering it, it's because it's wrong. I think it's 1,000,000,000% right, and since it's on the agenda, you know, I think it's something we need to consider. I just want you to understand my view of that if it has nothing to do with the operation of the city, why are we talking about it? But having already lost that because it's on the agenda, it's fine. Thank you.
I actually agree with the three speakers, and I rarely do. I do believe that it has to have a direct impact on the city. Later today, or later tonight, we're going to be asked to approve $14,714. The Public Safety Department has identified that this is a risk in the event of a hostile situation where the only way out of the building would be to go towards the threat. We are basically, we have 2 exits right now. We're proposing a 3rd exit be put in the lunchroom so that staff can egress. On February 23rd, Berkeley High School was shut down for 2 hours because a bullet was discovered there. In August, we have a Berkeley School District Sinking Fund millage proposal, which in part is for school security improvements, and then we can say, well, it's a public school issue and not a city issue. Well, public safety is the one that protects and is called when there's any kind of school issue. In my synagogue, we have gotten a Homeland Security grant for security. In Chartzetic, the same has occurred. If we believe there is no risk in this city, then vote it down. But if you think that, one, you're spending money or you're likely going to spend money, and you should be spending money later in this meeting to provide safety to our employees. And the public safety didn't say because of a fire. They said because of, and I'm quoting directly from what we were supplied with, because of a hostile situation. Not in Ferndale, not in Hazel Park, not in Detroit, but in Huntington Woods. I urge you to vote for this. I do agree that in general, if it doesn't seem to have a direct impact on Huntington Woods or Huntington Woods residents or Huntington Woods children or Huntington Woods seniors, that yes, maybe it doesn't belong, but this one does. And the other thing that I looked at right in the beginning was, is the Second Amendment being challenged? And it is not. And I mean, that's why I looked much more closely at this. I urge you to vote in favor of this.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much. Item number 1 is a matter of adopting the city budget for fiscal year commencing July 1st, 2018 and ending on June 30th, 2019. We have a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move that we adopt the city budget for the fiscal year commencing June 1st, 2018 and ending June 30th, 2019.
Second?
Any comments or questions from the public? Our city manager already gave a brief overview of the budget during the public hearing. Any questions at the city commission?
It's not a question, it's just a concern. Do we have any other funds other than $346,000 for local streets that will be available to us in the coming year budget.
No. Well, actually, we got a small amount of money from the county. I think that was
Oh,
like
God,
$7,000.
yeah. And they want us to pave 10 Mile Road with that.
Any other comments or questions?
Mr. Mayor, I'll just say that we continue to make it work despite the hostile environment we are in and how we are treated by those in Lansing in our state government. And so it's a testament to those of us on the commission and city administration for making it work and balancing our budget year after year. Thank you.
I would also add a thanks to Tony Lehman and to Tim, our new finance director, for all their hard work in the budget. Thanks for, as Commissioner Roselle said, bringing us another balanced budget. Makes it a lot easier to approve.
I hope at some point we deal with the bonding issue. We can't go very far with $345,000.
Okay. Any other comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We have a budget, we can continue operating for another year. Item number 2 is a matter authorizing the collection of the tax administration fee in accordance with Public Act 503 of 1982.
So, second.
Any public comment? Comments or questions in the commission? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 3 is an annual item that we do, transferring delinquent water payments from the 2017 and 18 to the 2018 summer tax roll for collection. We have a motion.
So move.
Second?
Any public comment or questions? Comments or questions, Commissioner Jacks?
Yeah, do we follow up with some of the larger bills? And the reason I'm asking that is there has been experiences in other counties where seniors have run out of money.
Mm-hmm.
They will not tell their children.
Yeah,
And they can end up losing their homes and stuff like that.
most of these larger bills, I would say, are not senior citizens or people who, a lot of people who, for over the course of 10 years, have never paid a water bill to the city hall. They let it go to their tax bill every year.
Oh, okay.
What's the thinking behind that?
I don't know what their motivation is. I can't say that, but I
Well,
maybe
they-
just pay it all
I think
at
they
once.
deduct it. Even though they're not supposed to, but they can deduct it.
Really? Oh, claim it as a part of your property taxes? Really?
But if you, I mean,
God, I just can't,
Oh, wow.
I guess there's a method to the madness.
but
not
with,
legally.
No, so you're saying that the people at 2,000 and plus are good CPAs and accountants?
yeah, I would just
Well, they're creative.
point out they've paid 4 quarters worth of late fees and a 4% additional interest charge. So hopefully the math works for them because it's a lot in fees and interest.
They can't deduct it from now on either.
Right, yeah.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Our next item of business is transferring the delinquent sidewalk payments from 2017-18 to the 2018 summer tax roll for collection.
So moved?
Second?
Any public comments, questions? Any comments or questions from the
Yes,
commission?
I'd like to request that the 6 people be contacted, just to make sure it's not hardship. I mean, if they disagree with what the city did, that's another story. Again, I don't want people falling into a trap. There's a lot of silence, especially in this community, when people run out of money.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 5 is a matter of considering appointments to the Long Range Budget and Planning Committee. We had 2 nights of interviews, had many wonderful citizens who volunteered their time and effort for this committee, and it is gonna require a lot of work. And it was a tough job getting it down to a somewhat manageable size, but do we have a motion from anyone?
So move.
I'll second it.
Let's name off the names.
Members of the Budget Advisory Committee, who are current: Rob Melching, Melanie Moretsky, Chris Vigliotti, Adam Kaplan, and Molly Tripp, and they had been on the previous committee. Former city employees: Shelley Gatch-Droz, who headed the library, and Tony Lehman, who headed finance. Currently serving on other boards: Jeff Samurai, Susan Klein, Mike Ignatovich. At-large candidates: Chuck Batchelor, Michael Lehman, Zach Andriani, Amit Bhagwan, Joseph Falick, Seth Kritzman, Lisa Momblanco, John Nantis, Kim Bateman, Frank Mione, Sharon Abramsky, Nicholas Gruber, Fred Fetchheimer, and Joel Kelman. The list is exciting. The skills are unbelievable.
This is a group of 24 people, which could be unmanageable for staff. But we hope, as a commission, we talked about this, we foresee the committee splitting themselves up into subgroups and taking on different parts of the issues facing us in the future. And whether they form an executive committee to report back to, or they come back as a committee as a whole, that we're gonna leave that up to them. But I think you're gonna have some great talent to work with here to help us get a clear vision for the future of Huntington Woods.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to extend a thanks to everybody who took the time to come and meet with us, and for these 24 individuals who will be spending probably the better part of a year getting educated and working through these issues. And I agree 100% with what you said. I had a lot of reservations about this committee size because it's almost unmanageable. But I sort of envisioned, after the 3 or so meetings of bringing everybody up to speed, that they would, exactly as you said, break out into smaller, more manageable groups, maybe for infrastructure or the library or Parks and Rec, in groups of maybe 4 or 5, and then report back. And I think a system like that is workable. Having this massive group of 24 meet throughout the year as a whole, I think is going to be an issue.
Any public comment? Any other comments?
Just a question. Will we be notifying them by mail, a phone call? How will we let them know?
I will send emails, if I have email addresses, and I'll let both the individuals that have been appointed and those that have not been appointed, I'll advise.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 6 is a matter of considering an appointment to the Environmental Advisory Committee. We have one opening at this time, and we got some candidates that we interviewed earlier this evening. Does anyone have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move Sarah Jo Sauter.
Is there a second?
Well, I think there should be discussion about the merits of, I don't know that that's necessarily the right way to do it. With regard to the other it's a different committee, but for the Budget Advisory Committee, people indicated there's, by numerical ranking, and there was a organized process, because I would move to appoint Ben Falick, but I'm not so sure. Is this the right way to do it, Chris?
You could withdraw the motion and have the discussion.
Be
on
happy to withdraw the motion so we can have a discussion.
All right, go. All right, so my view of this is always, two very nice folks. Mr. Falick has demonstrated a strong commitment to our community for many years. He served on the ZBA for 6 years. He indicated on his application that he was involved with Run, Walk, Boom. Well, he was more than involved with it. I believe it was his idea. And he took responsibility for the first one so many years ago, during the recession, I believe it was 2010, when that first started, because there was concern we couldn't afford to pay for the fireworks. So essentially, Run, Walk, Boom has become, with the assistance of some people such as myself as a sponsor, maybe not always running, but and others in the city, the source of the funding for the fireworks. I think that Mr. Falick's strength, among many, is he's very good at communication. He's a regular contributor to the Jewish News. He attached one of his articles, and I think what we talked about during our interviews was how important this communication business is, and educating members of the community on recycling issues, and getting people to understand why this is so important and how it saves the city money and so forth. So, like I said, we have two extremely good candidates here, but in my opinion, the only thing that tips the scale, if you will, is that Ben has been there repeatedly when asked by the city to participate and serve, and if he's interested in the Environmental Advisory Committee, I think we should be interested in him, and again, two very good candidates.
Mr. Mayor, I would echo 100% of what Commissioner Olsman said, pretty much word for word. Two very qualified candidates. And whoever is not appointed, I would recommend that we keep their application around. This is a committee that does have, has had vacancies in the past, and we could easily plug this other individual in, and I think it would be a very qualified appointment as well. So let's not discard this application and keep it on file.
I share that statement, and I mean, we had this happen earlier this year with a resident who showed up at one of the meetings that the city commissioner had, or excuse me, the city manager had with regard to the zoo, and by her presence, I believe it was Rachel Wall, by her presence at that meeting and by her contributing to the conversation, I thought everybody thought she would be a good candidate for a board or a commission, and she wound up on the environmental. So certainly Ms. Souter and Mr. Falick are both outstanding, but like I said, my only tipping of the scale, if you will, is based on prior commitment, prior experience, and prior dedication, and prior results, frankly, for the city. But I think the communication business here is critically important.
I would have to agree with Commissioner Olsman. I do think that we've got two great candidates. It's a good position to be in. I do think that Mr. Falick does bring some unique, skill sets to this position. So I would choose him. He'd be the guy I'd choose.
I would have loved to have two slots, because both are win-win individuals. Having served on the environmental committee, both short-term and long-term, one of the problems is communicating with the general public so that they understand what's going on. A second thing is also linking the school system. And the third thing is cooperation among many communities. Sarah Jo, from what she presented to us, has a communications background, has focused on this, and that has been what she has focused on most of her life. Ben Falick, unbelievable. Wonderful skills, wonderful writer, great contributor to the city, very, very well respected regionally, especially among young people. But I think Sarah Jo would meet a shortfall that this committee has had right now. I don't believe they've been trying to get the schools to work together. The schools have been reluctant to cooperate. They sell their surplus rather than using it in a practical way. The kids need to know more about the environment. This is a woman that doesn't focus on zoning, doesn't focus on 10 other things, focuses strictly in this area. But the real predicament was, from even before we spoke to either of them, that both are not just qualified, but both are highly qualified. I just think Sarah Jo may give us a better opportunity at this point in time as it relates to environment.
I think we should vote for which one we're gonna vote for.
And we need a motion.
Okay, so I move that we vote for the candidate that we believe we would vote for to appoint to the environmental committee. Vote to.
Speak English.
It's about
Speak
something
English, you're a lawyer.
right out of Groucho Marx, you know.
I think you can nominate a candidate.
So I would move to nominate Ben Falick.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor of the motion on the floor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries.
Actually, I'm not opposed. I'm just gonna, I didn't vote in favor. I'm not opposed to Ben Falick. But I'm not voting in favor. I'm abstaining.
Mr. Groucho, maybe you didn't hear the.
I heard the humor. I'm trying to copy it,
Yeah.
but I'm not as
You're
brilliant
failing.
as Ian.
You're failing in your mission.
I'm failacking in my mission.
Okay. All right.
Okay, item number 7, matter of considering a letter of support for a SEMCOG grant.
This is a new grant opportunity being offered to fund multi-community planning projects. So I've been working with the DDA director in Berkeley and the Oak Park Community Development Director. We've identified some potential opportunities for our cities to do joint projects. So I'd like a letter of support from the City Commission for the grant. Supporting the grant application is not carte blanche approval of the ideas that we are going to be studying, but it does give us an opportunity with an 80-20 grant to get feedback on some of these joint project opportunities that we could possibly take advantage of. And they are taking a look at opportunities for green infrastructure along Coolidge and along 11 Mile Road, the feasibility of a road diet on 11 Mile Road and Coolidge, where you take, like for instance, the 5 lanes on 11 Mile Road, you would go down to 3 lanes, 2 going each direction, and a center left turn lane, and then you would have opportunities for green infrastructure and bicycle lanes in the outside lanes that were not set aside for traffic, as well as looking at whether or not there are appropriate places to put crosswalks on Coolidge and on 11 Mile Road.
Move to support.
I'll second.
Any public comment? Any comments or questions from the commission? Commissioner Jenkins?
Yeah, bike lanes in the general literature improve the value of property. I live 3 houses from Coolidge, especially at night. The trucks use it because it's much less enforced. You get a lot of noise 24 hours. If you slow that down, you increase the value because it doesn't become a throughway for people to go down Coolidge, cross Woodward, and then continue virtually up to Maple.
Mr. Mayor, this grant is just funding the feasibility study, so we're under no obligation, right, to move forward. They're not going to require that a project ultimately be selected. So if it comes back and it's too expensive or it's not feasible, we don't have to do anything, but the study was paid for at 80%. Okay, thank you.
When you're looking at Coolidge, make sure that they do bring Beaumont Hospital into the conversation, just to get their opinion on traffic,
Yeah, the impact.
right, getting to the hospital.
By car or ambulance, right?
Yes.
Hopefully not by bike.
Hopefully not by, yeah.
We have those bike lanes.
Yes.
And
Although,
if you have to visit, and I was visiting all last week, even being at, you can get there very quickly, because you have to go through Berkeley at 30 miles an hour anyway, because they strictly enforce it. Once you get outside of Berkeley, it's 35. Berkeley's already doing the slow down. They already have parking on the streets.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 8 is another letter of support. This one for AARP Livable Community Grant for the crosswalk renovation project at Coolidge and Lincoln.
This is an application that the city of Oak Park put together for crosswalk enhancements at at Coolidge and Lincoln. And because we border Oak Park, they have asked us for a letter of support. There's no grant match to this, but they would are asking for a letter of support for their grant application.
Question, support, move to support.
I'll second.
Any public comment? Commissioner Jenks, did you have a comment or
Yeah,
question?
just a question. I trust they're gonna go all the way across on both sides of Lincoln, or just one side?
You know, I don't know the answer to
Okay.
that.
I find it a little paradoxical that we're gonna put bumps in there to help seniors strip. But I support the idea, it looks nice.
What do you mean by bumps?
Well, instead of the surface being flat, you're going to indent it so it looks like bricks.
Oh, yeah, the full brick,
Yeah, I mean, they only go down a little bit.
right.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 9 is a matter of consideration of purchase of used office furniture to replace the ancient furniture in the city manager's office, the finance director's office, and the clerk treasurer's office. If anyone's been in there lately, or if you've been in there in the 50s, it looks the same.
It owes us nothing, Mr. Mayor, it owes
Yes.
us nothing.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
So we're buying used furniture, does that get
Yes.
us up to the 90s?
You can tell we don't spend money on ourselves, and when we do, it's used.
Anyone who's sat in these chairs for 21 years as I have can attest to that.
Any public comment? Any other comments or questions from the commission? Commissioner Jenks?
If we think this furniture is so bad, why are we giving it to DPW rather than also ordering furniture for them?
Well, the newest of the old equipment is in the treasurer's office, and that's going over to the DPW that literally, I don't think, has ever seen any upgrades in desks. That is walking into the 1950s. I would also like to add, the motion, we need to include the fact that we're waiving the bid process because it's a single source procurement, so that needs to be part of the resolution.
Commissioner Olson, will you accept that?
Yes.
Yes, I'll accept it, yep.
I would appreciate that the next time you do a go-round, that you add DPW.
I agree with that. I'd
This,
be ready to
for
amend
the-
this to add that.
and
but
it's
It's not specific, but
Is that a
that's,
friendly amendment?
yeah, I think that's right.
Next time we have an opportunity to buy used furniture, they'll be at the top of the list.
Great.
Can we get that in the minutes, please?
Sure.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 10, we've had some discussion about already.
Yes,
So move.
this also is a single source procurement for the exit door at the lunchroom. City Hall is so well built that we had a very difficult time finding a contractor that could cut through the block wall and install the door. So we were able to locate somebody to do the installation and a firm to provide the door, but it is a sole source purchase, so that needs to be part of the resolution. Also, the amendment to the budget.
Well, it's a matter of employee and public safety. Unfortunately, I'm sure when City Hall was designed, they weren't contemplating the kind of stuff that goes on now. So, this is a matter of public safety and a matter of city employee safety. So I absolutely support it.
Second.
Any public comment? Any other comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We have two sets of reports and minutes, the Treasurer's Report and the Senior Advisory Housing Study Committee. We have a motion to receive and file.
So moved.
Second.
Any public comments or questions? Commissioner Jenks?
On the seniors, I'm happy that they're looking at City Hall. I'm a little bit uncomfortable with the statement that two positive aspects to senior housing on Woodward is less parking is required for an aging population, and traffic noise is usually a deterrent to development, but wouldn't be as big an issue as for seniors. One, being located at Woodward, and if those seniors wander, they have a much better chance of being killed. Two, the express bus stop is only at 11 Mile Road on Woodward, and 10 Mile Road. There's nothing at Lincoln, so transportation would be hard. Three, they are almost as far as you could be anywhere on Woodward from public safety in an emergency. And four, they're almost as far as they could be from the rec center. When the discussion of putting senior housing above City Hall came up, I was thrilled about it, and then I talked to some seniors and they said, that's fine, but we would like our housing to be right next to or on top of the rec center because we want exercise and things like that. So this is a place where it's easiest to put mixed-use housing. The shops at the bottom and things like that are really valuable, but from my point of view, it is the worst place to place seniors because you are going to place them in isolation. They can't knock on the back on the fence, which is high. They're going to have parking as a barrier because when you build these buildings, you build them up to the front and you put your parking behind. Creative shops on the bottom floor may result in people saying, oh, that's Huntington Woods, those are great stores, and you get shoppers that don't live in Huntington Woods stopping there. It may not be the quietest place. I love all the rest of the report, especially the mechanisms for funding. And we need to remember that if they build it's above City Hall and redo or rebuild City Hall and the police department, that the value of this land is a couple $1 million. And that's our share in a public-private partnership. It's a little different than if it's on Woodward, when it's mixed use. And I love mixed use. When the plan was rewritten years ago and Bonnie Cook was the planner, that was something that we put into the first plan.
Mr. Mayor, I would just caution that we not get too, the committee not get too narrow of a focus on this. I don't share some of those sentiments about the use of this property. I think that will have impact, a tremendous impact on the residents that live around here. And so I think I know you're a part of that committee. I would just caution that they not become too narrowly focused on only one idea and keep all options on the table.
Any other comments? Okay. The reports and minutes are received and filed. I guess we had a motion on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Warrant number 337, do we have a motion subject to full audit?
So moved.
Second.
Any public comment? Comments or questions from the commission? It's your chance to grill Tim.
We'll save it for more.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moves us to our city manager's report.
Yeah, a couple of items from our departments, from Parks and Recreation. The pool is gonna open Saturday, May 26th, Memorial Day weekend. Finally feels like summer might be coming. The summer edition of the Hometown Herald will be available on the city website tonight at midnight. And online and in-person registration classes will begin as soon as it's available online. And don't forget to register for the 6th annual Run Walk Boom that was discussed earlier. That will be held on Saturday, June 23rd. The citywide garage sales are this weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. If you want to participate, you'll need to get a permit and a sign from Public Safety or the Recreation Department. And I just want to remind the commission, if anybody's available this Thursday at 1 o'clock, we are doing the Arbor Day tree planting outside at City Hall. We had to postpone it a couple of times because of weather, but it is scheduled for Thursday at 1 if you're available.
Are there any questions of the city manager? We have recycling drop
Oh,
this
yes.
Saturday or Sunday?
The electronic scrap metal book collection event is Sunday from noon to 4 at the Department of Public Works. Thank you.
Commissioners' comments. I know you wrote the newsletter article that's coming out at midnight tonight, so you can defer your comments to your corner.
Hey, I made my comments, they all came up at the different sections, so
Great.
I, for once, will not talk for half an hour, but I do want to explain to everyone why I'm not talking.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mayor Pro Tem.
I do want to say, I appreciate what you said earlier. I do think proclamations, if they are going to come, they should come, just to second that, and have a fair, open discussion. Other than that, thank you, no comments.
Commissioner Holzman.
No comments. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Roselle.
No comments, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. I'm just gonna add one quick comment that, we have a holiday weekend coming up on Memorial Day, and I wish everyone a safe and happy holiday weekend. With that, meeting is adjourned.
Yeah, go out tomorrow.